Verstappen now has a 62-point lead with 3 races and 1 sprint race remaining. 86 points on the line at Las Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. And Max can finish 6th or better in the remaining 3 races and claim another World Drivers' Championship. Joe, is the championship over entering Las Vegas, and do you think McLaren will work the team orders again like they did this weekend?
It's not over yet, but as they said, he has one hand of championship, and I think it's safe to say he does have one hand of championship. Really, he needs to DNF and have a horrible race weekend at Las Vegas. We know the Red Bull is not exactly up to top speed. McLaren should be the favorite for Las Vegas. Look at Ferrari too. Max Verstappen, he's going to bring that car as close to the front as possible. If he could get points, he's going to be there. As for McLaren, I think this is a little bit to what Ben had said about them in our chat. I know we'll talk a little bit about. I feel for McLaren now is just, look, if Max Verstappen is 3rd or 4th, let's just run our own races. Try to just get the wins, not put ourselves in spots where we're trying to discuss team orders. Just go out there and race, because at the end of the day, if you got your 2 drivers 1st and 2nd, regardless who it is, and Max Verstappen's 4th place, okay, Lando Norris could pick up another 4 or 5 points, but that's it. Max Verstappen's still going to be that much closer. I think just run your own race. Max has this one hand on the championship by far.
Yeah, I think Intern Talks Wheel said it perfectly on Twitter this weekend. Papaya Fools. Forget Papaya Rules. It was Papaya Fools this weekend over at McLaren. I think they totally botched the strategy, pulled a Ferrari strategy, with what happened with Lando Norris in the race. I mean, obviously not a great look what happened in the sprint with Oscar Piastri being told to let Lando Norris through. Very blatant team orders. Obviously understand why they did it for the championship, but let's be honest at this point. The title fight is over, at least on the driver's side of things. Obviously, the Constructors' Championship is still very much a 3-way fight. Maybe only a 2-way fight. I don't know. We'll see. If Sergio Perez, the former king of the streets, as it were, can rediscover that magic, we'll see. Maybe Red Bull still has a shot at it, but that championship is going to come down to the wire, I think, between McLaren and Ferrari, and we'll see. But the Drivers' Championship, Joe, you mentioned Max has to DNF. I think Max has to DNF and Lando has to go on and win with the fastest lap, and he has to max. I think Qatar is the last sprint weekend. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong there. But he's got to go out and maximize his efforts there. I mean, he cannot afford to drop. He basically has to run the table from this point out. And even if he does that, he's going to need some help from Max Verstappen, having some bad luck crashing out of a race or, having a mechanical failure. I think, if Max just goes out and does, the bare minimum at this point, just brings the car home in one piece for the next 3 weekends, I think he's solidified, but he's at a point where we can call him a 4-time champion-elect, if you will, with how much of a championship lead he has here. I believe can also, wrap it up, as a matter of fact, if he goes out and wins Las Vegas and has enough of a points buffer from there. So it's going to take a miracle for Lando Norris at this point. I don't think that he's quite ready to be a world champion. We'll get into that here in just a moment, a little bit further as well.
Yeah, we will. And I think this championship is essentially over, but credit to McLaren for getting their car good enough during the second half of the season to at least make it interesting. I know beginning of the year, like, it was going to be a cakewalk by Max, and we would have wrapped this championship up, a handful of races ago, but really glad that they at least kept it interesting, as the racing has noticeably improved throughout the year. But all in all, I really think that this is over. And as you were saying, Ben, there's just really too many things that Lando Norris has to do right, and there's so many things that Max Verstappen has to do wrong to win this championship. I think it's extremely unlikely that we're going to see Max Verstappen, DNF in the 1 remaining sprint in Qatar, and then the 3 remaining Grand Prix, and then Lando Norris has to go out and basically do the Grand Slam for the final 3 race weekends of the Formula One season. I think the chances of that happening are extremely slim. So I really believe that Max Verstappen, it definitely has this thing in the bag unless something really crazy happens. Never say never, but still extremely unlikely. And once again, Lando Norris had the pole but didn't lead lap 1. He got around George Russell at the pit stops, but then the safety car came on red flag, put him behind. He also went off track, but wasn't a factor at all as Max Verstappen sliced and diced his way to the front of the field. And Ben, you've said this both privately and now publicly, that Lando Norris is not ready for a World Drivers' Championship. So can you expand on that opinion a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's not just Lando Norris. I think it's McLaren as well. I think, it's been, I mean, it's easy to forget with how much success they've had this year, but they had one win in the last decade plus when they took that 1-2 with Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris at Monza in 2021. So they're just only now getting back to the point where they were so many years ago, where they were competing for race wins and, of course, championships, kind of on a yearly basis. By the way, it's been a long time since they won the Constructors' Championship as well, which they could still very much do this year in all fairness. But in terms of a driver's championship and taking the fight to a generational talent like Max Verstappen, I mean, Kobe, you just said it. Once again, Lando Norris is on pole position, and forget lap one, he's lost the lead by corner one. He cannot maximize that starting position into so much as leading the first lap of the race and making the rest of the race significantly easier for him. And when you fall back further in the pack here, or even just a couple of spots down to second or third, it puts more pressure on the team strategy department to find a way for you to get around the drivers that have passed you on the start. And, just it leads to the opportunity to throw even more points away. So I think there is an alternate timeline out there where Lando Norris is the best starter in Formula One in 2024, and he's able to maximize all these pole positions and lead these first laps and not drop all these points, and maybe he could be world champion. But in the reality that we're living in, that we're talking about here right now, Max Verstappen, despite the fact that he hasn't had the car the second half of the year, but he did in the first part of the season, I think as we saw today, he is still, you can say what you will, and goodness knows, I think, with the possible exception of Matt White, nobody's been more critical on this team than I have about Max Verstappen's driving the last couple of weeks. But you cannot deny, I saw the quote from Lando after the race as well, but that they got lucky with the safety car and everything. I don't know. It seems like it takes a little bit more than just luck to go from 17th to 1st in torrential conditions like this. So nobody can deny the talent that Max Verstappen possesses behind the wheel of an F1 car. And even if he had ended up losing that championship fight to Lewis Hamilton in 2021, we don't need to open the Abu Dhabi can of worms here, but the reality is he won that championship. Even if he hadn't won that championship, you could at least look at the talent and drives that he put in that season and say, this guy's going to get one of these days. I think if Lando Norris is going to be a world champion, I think, he's a very, very good driver. Don't get me wrong. Anybody that is in position to potentially win one of these is a fantastic driver and has talent that should be lauded and praised and all that. But I think Lando's going to need the team to support him a little bit more than, say, Max Verstappen necessarily needs Red Bull to support him in his championship fights, because I think Max just has that extra level that he can unlock, that extra gear that he can unlock that can overcome that a little bit more than Lando Norris can here. And we've seen it particularly on the starts this year. I think Lando has still some growing and maturing to do and improvements that he can make as a driver before we're ready to definitively say this guy is a surefire future Formula One world champion. He may very well be one day. He might win multiple championships. I don't know. But as of what we've seen this year, I still think there's some work to do to say that about Lando Norris.